I'm Pat Spear, scientist on the faculty at Northwestern University Medical School here in Chicago. I'm not a blogger, but I'm a regular reader of what comes out of Center for American Progress and Media Matters. My question has to do with the Military Commissions Act and Guantanamo. When can we expect that act to be rescinded? When can we expect Guantanamo to be closed? And assuming you agree with these goals, what are you doing about that?
Well, I agree with both of those goals. And I voted against the Military Commissions Act, and I voted against it for a number of reasons, but perhaps first and foremost was its unconstitutional denial of habeas corpus, which is embedded in our Constitution. And we're going to try to reinstate habeas corpus and reform the military tribunal / commission procedures. We hope in the next months. We're working, this is obviously being worked through to try to get a bipartisan coalition that will actually give us the votes we need, because all of you know, I don't have to explain to you that if you can't count 60 votes, you can't get it through the Senate. That's one of our very big problems right now. And so we're trying to put together a coalition in order to change the military commissions, reinstate habeas corpus. Secondly, on Guantanamo, I have said that we must close Guantanamo, and I believe that there will be an increasing political pressure to do that. We've got some issues we've got to figure out what to do about, and that's going to take some careful consideration, but we should start that now. We should begin to really look at all of the implications and consequences. So if we don't get changes in the Military Commission Act and a reinstatement of habeas corpus, and if we're not on the road to closing Guantanamo when I'm president, I will start doing both of those things.
Beyond Cron in San Francisco. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for having gone on the record saying that you would be willing to repeal the Don't Ask, Don't Tell provision, which of course was implemented during your husband's administration. So I wanted to have the opportunity to ask you about 4 other pieces of legislation that happened during the Clinton years, and whether you would be willing to also advocate their repeal. The Defense of Marriage Act, the Telecommunications Bill of 1996, NAFTA, and the Welfare Reform of 1996.
Well, how much time do we have? Well, first, let me say I've been on the record against Don't Ask, Don't Tell since '99. And I believe that it was the best that could be gotten in the political circumstances that existed at the time. It has been, in my view, not implemented appropriately, and a lot of very brave and dedicated Americans have been discharged from the military at, I would believe, the cost to our military readiness, particularly those who have missions that are directly related to our security, and it's just mind-boggling that we would dismiss linguists, for example. So I'm hoping that as president, I can lead the effort to repeal it and to put the concerns about it behind us. As I've said in a couple of different settings, you know, I love this Barry Goldwater quote, you don't have to be straight to shoot straight. And we should give every single American who's willing to serve their country the chance to do so under the code of military justice, so that your behavior, not your status or your sexual orientation, determines your performance and your promotion. Secondly, DOMA, I believe that DOMA served a very important purpose. I was one of the architects of the strategy against the marriage amendment to the Constitution, and DOMA gave us a bright line to be able to hold back the votes that were building up to do what I consider to be absolutely abominable, and that would be to amend the Constitution to enshrine discrimination. I believe marriage should be left to the states. I support civil unions, as I have said many times, with full equality of benefits. And so I think that DOMA appropriately put the responsibility in the states where it has historically belonged, and I think you're beginning to see states take actions. I think it's Part 3 of DOMA needs to be repealed because Part 3 stands in the way of the full extension of federal benefits, and I support that. So that's the first. Secondly, NAFTA. You know, I have said that NAFTA did not realize the benefits that it was promised for a number of reasons, and in fact, as a senator from New York, I issued a report that talked about all the problems that business people and farmers had in New York getting their products into Canada. This is not just about, you know, Mexico. This is about the tripartite relationship. So I think we have to generally have smarter trade agreements that not only have labor and environmental standards, which I fully support, but really have an ongoing evaluation of the impact of trade agreements. That's why I have legislation to have the analysis of what actually has happened compared to what was promised, both unintended and intended consequences, be part of the ongoing monitoring of trade agreements. And I do think we've got to find ways to work with our neighbors in the hemisphere more closely, including trying to think of ways we can stimulate job creation and economic development to the South, which I think is a win-win if we can figure out how to do it. With respect to welfare reform, I think the positive consequences of welfare reform far outweigh the negative, and the regret that I have is that in the last 6.5 years, the work that we did to try to protect medical care and educational benefits for people getting off of welfare and working at low-wage jobs have been the subject of attacks by the Bush administration. The education program, which was key to my support for the original legislation, was severely cut back. And I think that was a mistake, and I'd like to reverse that. I believe that we should encourage people to continue with education as much as possible. And we're in this big fight now about health care for children, you know, a combination of Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, something that I helped to start when I was First Lady. You know, we should obviously stand against the Bush threat to veto what we passed in the Senate and the House last week. And eventually we need to get to universal health care so we don't have these battles. But it's one thing that we have to protect as we move forward. But let me just end with this. I mean, every election is about the future. Every election is about the future. And it is about what kind of change we want for our country. I have been fighting for change my entire life, often against some pretty tough odds. I mean, I'm very proud of my record of service and my record in public service. But what's really going to matter in this election is how much power and energy we have from citizens across America. And I love a vigorous debate. And I love a great exchange of ideas, and I think that's what primaries are for, and that is certainly what the blogosphere is for. So I appreciate what you're doing. Not everything you're doing, but, you know, enough. And I invite you to really be partners with my campaign. That doesn't mean, you know, you have to support me, although I wish you would, but it does mean that we want to hear from you. So take Peter's invitation seriously. We've got to reach out to people who may never read a blog, may not agree with you or me 100%, but who know in their core that we have to have a new direction in this country. That's my mission. I am here to win and change America, and I thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you all.